We now next move to the book launch of But I'm One of You, Northeast India and the Struggle to Belong, edited by Samrat Chaudhary and Preeti Gill. So for this, I would like to invite Preeti Gill, the co-editor of this book, to please come on stage. Preeti Gill is a commissioning editor and rights director. She has traveled extensively in the northeast of India and written on issues of conflict and women. She is the editor of the Peripheral Center, Voices from India's Northeast, as well as Bearing Witness, a report on the impact of conflict on women in Nagaland and Assam. Her writing has appeared in numerous journals and anthologies, including 1984 in Memory and Imagination, in 2016. Her documentary, Rambwe, I hope I pronounced it correctly, Mizoram's Troubled Years, co-produced with Sanjoy Hazarika, was released in September 2016. She has edited She Stoops to Kill, an anthology of murder stories by women as well as insider-outsider, belonging and unbelonging to India's Northeast India, both published in 2019. Her new anthology is But I'm One of You, Northeast India and the Struggle to Belong, co-edited with Samrat Chaudhary, which we have in display before you here. She spends her time between India and Amritsar, where she has set up a literary and cultural hub, the first of its kind called Majha House, which regularly holds literary and cultural events and festivals. Her even volume of non-fiction essays on Punjab is forthcoming. And I would just like to add here, off record, that I have also attended Majha House sessions long back when it was just started. So we also have Sanjoy Hazarika sir as the discussant with her. So sir combines roles as researcher, columnist, mentor, and practitioner. I guess we don't need any new introduction to him. He has already chaired a wonderful session in the morning. We will also have Soumya Roy sir on stage with him, and our Excellency Madam Diana on stage here. Yes, sir. And I would like to request Dr. Stuti Goswami ma'am to kindly felicitate our guest, Preeti Gill. Gilson. Gilson is here? Okay. Can we have Gilson Carvalho please on stage? And Jasmine ma'am to please felicitate Mr. Carvalho. Yeah. First Preeti ma'am and then Carvalho sir. Mr. Carvalho is a journalist at the Fluminense Federal University, UFF, in Niterói, Brazil, with a master's degree in letters and specializations in translation and Francophone literature from the same university. His main interests are art and culture, including cinema, literature, and fine arts. So the floor is open and the session will be beginning now. Before the discussion begins, we will have the book launch of But I'm One of You, Northeast India and the Struggle to Belong. And I now call upon Ambassador Diana to please release the book. Actually, you have the mic there also, but I think it's better for me.
Good afternoon, everyone, and especially to the panelists, and especially to the co-editor of the book, uh, which I had a pleasure reading bits of it already this morning. And I really look forward to reading all of it because it turned out to be a very interesting topic to me. I have, with my background in Indology, I have taken interest also in the issues of identity. And mind you, India, but in Lithuania, we also have diversity. We also have issues of identity. And sometimes, reading the passages of who is insider and outsider, I was able to really, draw parallels also to, from the content of the book to the context of Europe, and especially small states in Europe, especially the ones which have been on the fault lines of histories, borders drawn and withdrawn and redrawn again. So I only want to congratulate, yes, I had lived in Delhi, and as a student, I had a neighbor from Assam, a young student who used to tell me stories of belonging and not belonging, and quite militant stories, actually. So, having met a lot of people from Northeast in India, I very much, am aware of what they feel and sometimes apply that they feel. And at the same time, I was very intrigued to read, how things work here when someone who is not maybe originally from this area for thousands of years can also be called outsider. So, this outsider-insider game plays out against you, but one can easily be involved in playing it out against someone else. So I think that discussion is in fact very, very relevant. To me, the multiple identities have always been the beauty of India, and multiple identities allowing to coexist, with one another and welcoming other identities, I think is something that we all, look forward to. So my congratulations to the co-editors. I don't know the other one, but please pass on my best wishes to him as well. At Preeti, my congratulations for, I think, excellent quality book, which will contribute to academic and social discussions in the field, and will also, I think, enhance the understanding of the area to an outsider like me. Thank you so much.
Can we have that light off? Because it's really in the eyes. If it's, I mean, the one there, shining. Not this one, because then I can't see my notes, but yeah. That must be the camera or something, no? Yeah, it's kilo. So first of all, of course, to say thank you to the Royal Global University and to Imasi Foundation for this invitation to come here and to speak. Thank you to Somi, to Shiela, to the entire team for this opportunity and for this release of the book. The book has traveled a little bit. It was released in August, on the 14th of August actually, which is a very important date because as we see the rise of majoritarianism in the country, as we see divisions growing, as we see insiders and outsiders, and as we see new borders being drawn constantly, I think it was really important that we chose that date on which to release this book. since then, the book has traveled to some festivals in the Northeast and to some festivals in other parts of the country. I'm very glad it's here. Um, for me, this is a completely new and different experience, as I've been telling Somi. Um, most literature festivals that I have gone to, and I have gone to a lot. Somebody asked me how many are there in India, and I said at last count, Jerry Pinto had told me there were 92, so they're probably more than that now. But there's nothing quite like the listener. This is my first time here, but this one day has shown me not only, I mean, you know all of this, but it's where language begins and where understanding begins and where stories actually start from. So although we've had a lot of really visually enriching presentations, beginning from Sanjoy's story of the Brahmaputra right down to the last one, the Sarna religion, the songs of the Oraon. A lot of it which I did not know about, and a lot of it which has been extremely interesting to listen to. This book, however, is like a dark chapter. But it is stories, it is personal anecdotes, it is narratives from the different states of the northeast of India and from the different communities in the different states of the northeast of India. It is the second volume in the series. The first one, which was called Insider, Outsider, Belonging and Belonging and Unbelonging in Northeast India. And then this one, which is But I Am One of You, which to me seems like literally a cry in distress or of despair, asking for acceptance, asking people that surely you're able to see and surely you can have an inclusive society where we are able to all exist and coexist. So that, I think, was the idea. The idea when we started the book was not to create more divisions and start looking at ourselves as different people, but to start looking at what makes us one and what are the different experiences communities and people from those communities, however small or large they may be, face when they come out to the metros or when people from, say, Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai go to different areas in the Northeast. Mostly we see mirror images of each other. So it's not like the person that comes out from here comes to Delhi and is called chinky or other pejoratives that you hear. You don't get a house. People tell you that you make smelly food. There's all kinds of, atrocious kind of allegations and slurs, stereotyping. But a lot of that, I think, is also faced by the people who come from the so-called Indian mainland to these different states. Every state has a name for the outsider, whether it's Dhakar or Vai or Mayang or whatever. I know that when I first started traveling to this region, and it was, I think, one of the first time that I went to Nagaland actually, and a young girl came to pick me up in Kohima. In Dimapur. I was coming from Delhi, and she told me that, how are you going to recognize me? I'll wear so-and-so color, and I will, I will carry a flower for you. So I said, okay. She said, I don't have to ask you how to recognize you because you look completely different from everybody else. So I said, yeah, that's quite true. And that's how it was. So then when we reached Kohima, there was like a fashion show there, and it was a fashion show of tribal costumes and the shawls, and they were trying to tell us what every line and every motif on the shawl denoted. And she put me on one of the tables because she was also participating. And on that table, there was this Naga gentleman sitting next to me. And he turned to me and he said, look around you, there's not even one Indian. Everybody is a foreigner or they're Naga. So I think that was the first time that I got called an Indian in India. And it came as quite a surprise. So, I mean, those were the many reasons for me getting interested in this region, getting interested especially in this topic of who is the outsider and who is the insider. And also the fact that I come from a partition family. I am Punjabi. My family came from the other side. in what is now Pakistan. So that again is something that you've grown up with, listening to stories of having migrated, of having traveled, of having lost a homeland, of having tried to create a new home, a new livelihood. These are stories that we have grown up with, but these are also the silences, I think, that in many parts of the northeast of India, we do not hear these stories. I know that when we traveled, they mentioned the film that we had done called Rambai. When we traveled in Mizoram for that film, there were many people who did not want to talk about it. There were huge silences around that issue. And that again is one of the things that I think it's important. It is time, it is crucial that we start to speak of all these things. I had thought that actually I would read the dedication to this particular book, because also it is not just the northeast of India and the rest of India, but it is the world. And I think we are increasingly looking at similar problems. So the dedication here is from the mountains to the plains, from the river to the seas, to all people everywhere who are struggling to belong. And I think that is the most important idea that this book contains. I mean, I can go on and on trying to tell you lots of little things that I felt were very, very important as we were doing this book. But in the interest of time, I don't know whether I should carry on a bit more. I have always felt that because of the kind of distance, the marginality of this region, it has been very little known, and in the rest of the country especially, there is very little knowledge and very little understanding. I've been in publishing for 25, 30 years, and I know that when I used to work with a journal called The Book Review a long time ago, and when we started to actually do a journal that was looking, an entire issue of the journal which was looking at the literatures of the Northeast and tried to look for writers from here, we could think of no one except Indira Goswami. And that was also because she was in Delhi and she was a professor there in the School of Languages. And that is a big shame. And of course, this was many years ago. But I think that was again one of the things that propelled me specifically to set out, to find the writers, to find the books, to find the content that I think the rest of the country needs to know. And I'm really happy about this book, and I'm really happy about the list that I was able to create for Kali for Women and then later for Zuban, which are all stories that have emerged from this region. So I think I'll leave it over there.
Thanks, Preeti. What she didn't say, she briefly mentioned this list that she did for Kali for Women and for Zuban. And she's also a literary agent. So among the things she does is actually find writers in the Northeast and get them published. And that is quite, and some of your publications, some of the books are also translations, which have gone on to win awards and so on. So I think there is much that we can learn from this experience. I don't actually want to say very much. I'd much rather turn to Mr. Carvalho, because, you know, he comes from a country with a very diverse range of communities, one nationality, many communities. He also, his country, Brazil, has a huge river flowing through it, just as we are talking about the Brahmaputra. They also have the Amazon, they have indigeneity, they have indigenous communities, tribes, which are also pushed to the periphery but are mobilizing and facing support and opposition from others. They face the pressure of contractors and businessmen and politicians and corporates. And I think it'll be really interesting to really hear from you, because you've read the book, and let's not talk about the book, but we'll talk about your experiences and what you feel is happening in your country and which will definitely resonate with us?
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank the festival, Mr. Swami Roy, Mrs. Sheila Bora, and Mr. Nambarum Paul for inviting me here. It's a great pleasure, great honor. I think my modest contribution would be make comments, bring some insights about Brazil, our reality, especially in what concerns the indigenous population. That's really important to our culture. Although we have been apart for centuries of history, more and more we are becoming aware of the importance of listening to them, especially in this moment when the climate changes are making the world change so dramatically, and they have been warning us that it could happen, that it would happen if we didn't preserve the forest. And with the forest, the Amazon forest, the biggest tropical forest in the world, all the stories that have been told generations after generation there in the region. So it's very sad for me as a Brazilian to come here and say, we don't know our country, our culture. I live in Rio de Janeiro, so the Amazon forest is like 4,000 kilometers from the place I live. I have been there 2 times, and always with the eye of a foreigner in my own country. Because we Brazilians, we don't recognize ourselves as indigenous, which is such a crazy thing. Why? Because language, habits, food, lots of things come from the indigenous people in Brazil. And it's very interesting that Brazil has a lot to do with India and its foundation. You must be aware that when the Europeans started looking for a way to reach India and its spices, a lot of spices, they reached Brazil and the Caribbean, imagining, believing that they had reached India. So our native people are called Indians. Until today, we refer to them as Indians. And we have much more in common. Not only this anecdote, but much more in common. What we have, right, really important to discuss is our colonial past. We, both countries, have been through this experience of colonization by alien nations that try to impose it, their culture, their language, their habits, their religions. And the native languages, religions, ways of life were pushed away throughout history. And now, in the 21st century, but for some time already, we have seen the big corporations, the miners, the loggers, the missionaries that come to convert the indigenous people to their religions, to teach the indigenous people their languages, and basically to explore their wealth, everything that they have there. And that's very interesting that the indigenous themselves, they don't consider that they own the land. They consider that they live with the land, with the nature. They don't dominate, they don't tame. They just share with all communities that exist there that environment that provides them everything that they need. And because they couldn't be enslaved at the beginning of the colonization, we were taught at school, I remember when I was a child, that the Indians in Brazil, the indigenous people, were lazy. They didn't work. They didn't do anything. They stayed there in the forest doing nothing. And just recently, the last, let's say, 50 years, maybe, we have seen this story being retold by them, by the indigenous people as protagonists over their own narratives. And luckily, nowadays, we have many tools for that. So we have not only books being written, but films being made, podcasts being made, both in their own languages. There are above 200 indigenous languages in Brazil, and in Portuguese. And other people are going to the politics, are going to the academy. So we have doctors that come from the tribes, from the indigenous communities. We have senators, deputies that are fighting in the Congress for their rights. So although the law has changed, that was talked with Somi the other day, we had, after 25 years of a brutal military dictatorship that ended in 1985, we had a very progressive new constitution that was launched in 1988 that granted all the civil rights to the indigenous people too. It meant access to health, access to education, including multilingual education. So they had to make a way, create a way to the indigenous people teach their own language, because some languages were disappearing because nobody was teaching them. So the new generations were growing in a limbo because they didn't integrate into what we call white society, Western society, and they didn't feel like they belonged in that original community because they didn't speak the language. They were not learning the traditions because they are basically oral, and they didn't have this chance because they didn't know the language. So it's something very crazy. I have been to a few communities. In my state, Rio de Janeiro state, we have communities of indigenous people. And you see the large gap between the old generations and the young generations. A very vigorous efforts being made, even by my university, to engage the new generations back to the old traditions, to keep their culture alive. And sometimes not very easy, because who would like to be the lazy one? Who would like to be confronted by people who think that they are worth nothing, that they don't produce nothing? And when they try to integrate, in many cases, people criticize the indigenous person because he's using a mobile. So it means that they must stay in the rock age, right? And again, with the climate changes, we had last year a very serious episode of an enormous flood in an area in the south of Brazil, which are not bound to have that kind of phenomenon. And it's all caused by the loss of forest. The deforestation in the Amazon is affecting the climate everywhere in Brazil and South America. So we have to pay attention and listen to those stories. And as for identity, I was talking early to Mrs. Gill. It's amazing how we can relate so easily to those stories, because it sounds like it's our story also. I've heard that kind of narrative in my country, so it's very important that we kind of dialogue. No, I wouldn't say compare, because it's very difficult. India and Brazil, they have some differences in history, in geography, in culture, in lots of things. But we have this experience of exclusion. If I would use a word to describe the situation of the indigenous population in Brazil for many centuries would be exclusion. And now finally it's changing by their own will, by their own power. So I'm lucky to be here, to be able to tell you a little bit of this story, this history, and to learn from you, because I think that we can also apply lots of things that we have been hearing here and share experiences. Okay? Thank you.
So, all of that, of course, resonates completely. And I just wanted to mention that the two questions in the book that really ring out very, very loud through each of the essays in the book, and each essay is really personal. It's a personal account. It's where your own experience seems to meet with the politics that is being played out in the region, and how the two often seem to bounce against each other to the detriment of the individual, of course. So the questions here, I think, are one being, where are you from? Everybody is always being asked, where are you from? And whether you're in Delhi and you're being asked that because you look different, or whether you're here and you're being asked, it's the same question that comes up again and again. And then the second question is, what is an Indian? I mean, what does an Indian look like? Do we have a description? Do we have one photograph of one kind of Indian? I mean, I remember even this, you have this poster at the back. I mean, they're all different. People are different looking in this country. I mean, apart from the fact of language and religion and food and all the rest of it, we do look very different from each other, from the north to the south and east to the west. So who is this Indian? And I just wanted to also, because in this book we have a poem by Cherry Changte, who's a Mizo poet who's quite well known, and she says the same thing. 1 minute, I'm just going to find it. Yeah. She says, what does an Indian look like? And I am a curiosity, an ethnic specimen, politics, history, anthropology, your impressive learning, all unable to answer the fundamental question, what does an Indian look like? An Indian looks like me. An Indian is me. So, I mean, that's what it is at the end. And this anthology, because it was constantly raising these questions, was something that seemed to completely grip our imagination as we went from essay to essay, essay to essay. There's a lot of other really important instances and examples from each of the essays, and even as far as so me, because of Manipur and the Chief Minister having finally resigned after 2 years, and Manipur being such an important issue, even when this book was released last year, it was still, all of those questions were still being asked, and all of it was still being avoided in our mainstream media. But we have 4 essays here which are on Manipur, and they are from all the different communities, including the Muslims. And so I think in many ways it's a very representative anthology of what is happening in a little known, faraway region of the country. I also want to, in a manner, tie it in with where I am at present, because I have been doing a lot of work in the Northeast through all these years, but I am now largely based in Punjab, and as the person at the bio was being read out, that I have a place in Amritsar, which I use as a cultural and literary space. And so I am also looking now at the peripheralization, actually, of Punjab. So if the Northeast was the periphery at one time, but is now being taken into the larger India fold, there are certain other places which are being peripheralized. And I mean, it's not part of this discussion, it's not part of this book, but it's something that strikes me each time that I read about. I mean, many of the essays that you will read here are reflections of exactly what one thinks of. So partition, of course, being very far away, but 84 just being down the corner, and the kind of stuff that you were being asked at that time, because you were asked to prove the fact that you were Indian, the fact that you are not anti-national, that, you know, some two people happened to assassinate the prime minister, and each one of us had to say that, no, you know, I'm legit. So where does all that leave you? So you don't need NRC, and you don't need CEA, and you don't need any of these things. We are asked these questions every single day. People here, people there. So I just want us all to also be conscious of the new borders that are being drawn and the new peripheralizations that are being created. So let's look at all of that also. Let's just not try and look at silos and sort of keep ourselves away from what is happening in the rest of the country, because everything is connected, country and, as you said, outside of the country. So everything that is now being said every day with the executive orders that Mr. Trump is passing, I mean, there is new stuff to actually be afraid of.
Well, thanks for bringing that in, because I think it's very important that we always look at the framework, not just get stuck in micro issues. It's important to focus on the micro, but it's also important to look, as you're doing, on the larger issues. And I actually was looking at the title of the book, but I am also one of you. But some people have taken it to the other extreme. You have elites in the Northeast who are really controlling things, extremely wealthy, maybe extremely corrupt, extremely powerful, and extremely visible. And this was brought to my notice just a few days ago. There was a group of women editors who had come to Guwahati. There were 150 women editors, journalists who came to Guwahati and had a national meeting. Then some of them, including my friends, came up to Shillong. And they were saying that Shillong seems to be wealthier than Guwahati. I mean, the kind of houses you see, he says, where is all this money coming from? And there was a local editor there, Patricia Mukim, you may know her, and I said, this is also coming from the pauperization of the rural communities, because the elite is buying out large properties in the rural areas, and these people with no livelihoods, with little opportunity, are coming into the town. So the town is getting saturated, and their lands are getting, in a way, colonized. And this is increasingly what's happening in Manipur, in Assam, in various other places where you have large areas being taken over by a small group of people. So we are becoming more and more like the other that we often position ourselves against. That's one thing. The other thing I wanted to mention is just pick up on what you said, which struck me, that the indigenous communities of the Amazon, of Brazil, regard the land as like a heritage, something that it is not for them to control or use, but something of an inheritance which they must take care of. And I'm afraid that here, increasingly, not just in this region we call the Northeast, but other parts of India, even so-called indigenous communities are getting into the whole extraction process. Now that is like a process of time and ideology and financial processes which are beyond our control. But this is also increasingly happening. I was interested, and I want you to reflect on this a bit. In the region we call the Northeast, I say that because this is neither north of anywhere or east of somewhere. It's east of Bangladesh and it's north of what? The Bay of Bengal and Bangladesh. Anyway, so there are regional parties, and you are describing the political mobilization of the indigenous people, but they are with national parties. Here there are so many regional parties which seek to represent the people who have regional aspirations for development and protection and so on. What's the situation there now?
Well, that's an excellent question because I think, like everywhere in the world, many people they have some allergy to politics, to politicians. They don't deal well with that idea of becoming a politician to go for their own rights. It's very sad, very serious, because if we don't fight for our own rights, who will? But then finally, the last, like I said, 50 years, maybe a little less, some people are getting into politics with a lot of problems because, first of all, they are discredited from beginning. They, the traditional politicians, there are families that have been in that for 300 years and they think that they own everything. They say the Indians don't have, the indigenous people, the native people don't have brains for politics or anything else. So they must be very brave. Not to mention that they are sometimes at risk of losing their own lives because they are killed, they are assassinated by the big farmers that advance on their land, on the land that is supposed to be protected for the indigenous people to live. There's something very important. Originally, the indigenous people in Brazil were nomadic. So they tend to occupy a large area. But they occupy, but they don't destroy anything. They take only what they need for survival. They don't accumulate anything, you know. They live on the land, but basically they live with the land. So, because of this need, this urge to give voice to the communities who have been suffering. For example, I watched 2 years ago a documentary about a region in Brazil that's becoming very rich with the agriculture for export. Brazil is one of the biggest exporters of food in the world now. And the farmers there, they spray poison on the indigenous land, on the indigenous community. So they have no place to run because death comes from the air. And when they denounce that, when they go to the press, many times the press is sold to the powerful, as everywhere, I think. It's something very serious also. Or when they go to the Congress, not always they find any politician to support them. And we don't have still any, even local party, political party, that will take the indigenous agenda as their own, as something of national interest. So we have individuals, few individuals that are getting into politics, learning with lots of difficulty how to deal with the bureaucracy, with the, many obstacles that are imposed to them because it's the same as everywhere. If I decided to become a politician now, I doubt that I would be because, everything is you give, you take, like something, negotiation that they always win, always, no matter what, is being negotiated. So we trust that probably through communication, through making the communities, and then we have this phenomenon of this new identities, multiple identities. We have, for example, a group of female indigenous that are producing films with a feminist point of view. So something that it's even for us, even what do you mean feminine indigenous point of view? Yeah, sure, of course. In the minorities, there are sub-minorities and so uh, there are groups of people who are like LGBT and they are black. So they form a group to fight for their rights in NGOs, at universities. So we have some hope because many people are trying to change the situation, but the establishment is too strong, too difficult to drill, to penetrate. So yeah, I was talking to Dan a little earlier. We advance a little, but then it looks like we go backwards a lot. So this wave, this ups and downs all the time. Nowadays, 2025, it's not really, I would say, the best moment, but it's not the worst either. We are like average. So let's see what comes in the near future.
Thank you. Actually, we're a small group here, and I know it's the end of a very long day, so you're all probably tired and exhausted, but we would take a few minutes more because I don't think very often we get somebody like Gilson Carvalho to come and share their thoughts, or Preeti to come and share her thoughts. But I just wanted to, before handing it to them, I just wanted to remark on two things. One, you mentioned also that there is a colonial construct of which we are all descendants. It is not something that you can necessarily win. There is a structure, there are laws, there are formations which have been there for a long time. That's one. The second thing is that this region from the 1950s till quite recently had insurgencies, armed insurgencies. So the way that India recognized the region was through the power of a gun. That power speaks through the barrel of a gun. And China and Pakistan were involved in the arming of the insurgency. Now that is almost like a long forgotten history because things are peaceful except in Somi state for whatever reason. But even there I hope it will go back, if not to normal, but to a better time than it's seen in the past 2 years. But these insurgencies have become, in a way, many of those from these insurgencies have gone into politics, have gone into business, and the insurgencies themselves have quietened, if not died, and are in a process of being negotiated. I mean, some negotiations have gone on for 25 years, 27 years, one particular one. So people are turning their back on violence, they're turning to new things. I mean, this kind of a place didn't exist maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So people are, students are coming here there because a few years ago, remember 15 years ago, there used to be almost like check gates, checkpoints almost every half a kilometer. So nobody would travel in the evening. There would be no night shows at night, no cinemas at night. The place would be deserted after 7 or 8. No markets, nothing. Now, everything is booming. People forget that there is a history to what has happened. And there is still a challenge in retaining that peace and building. So if inequality persists, I think that violence, and despite the good feel-good factor that is around, could well return. Now, I just want to, I know we are very close to ending, but I'd like both of you to just share concluding thoughts. I'll give it to you first and then to Carvalho.
I'm just going to give some positive thing. Here it is. I was trying to find something which is positive to say at the end of it all. So, no, I don't want to read a poem. There's an essay here which is again, from Mizoram, but from somebody from the Gorkha community, a young man called Pratap Chetri. And, Gorkha? You don't call them Nepal? Well, so, yeah, so he actually said something which was pretty interesting and which I thought I should conclude with, because despite all the othering and everything else, and despite having constantly being told that he doesn't belong and that he is different, and despite the fact that they've lived in Mizoram for years and years, he still says something which is really interesting. Now I have to find it, so maybe you say.
So I'd like again to thank the festival for having me here. I hope I have brought something interesting. Any further questions, no, just approach me. And one little thing I'd like to say, it's my fourth time in India, my third time in Assam. When I was introduced to Northeast for the first time, long time back, 15 years ago, what I heard about Assam by Indians, not only Assam but Northeast, that nobody liked this region, nobody knew this region, nobody wanted to know this region. And this region also didn't know or didn't have the chance to know the rest of the country. The continental, that's what people say, like if Northeast was an island. And when I came here, I was so surprised because I didn't understand, I still don't understand what's wrong with Northeast. I see wonderful people, warm, friendly people, so rich in history, in traditions, in cultures and languages. For me, it's still amazing after being studying India for 15 years or so, informally as amateur, like amateur who loves, not amateur because it's not good enough. That you have so much diversity, variety. And I was talking to my friend the other day, these few days. The first thing that I learned about this diversity was India was unity in diversity. That was the motto, right? But then it looks like some people don't think so, don't behave so. And in Brazil, we speak basically one language. If you don't consider the 200 so languages of the indigenous native people, we have only Portuguese as language. We have some dialects, some accents, but it's basically the same language. And when I come to here, I listen 4 or 5 languages on one day, and it amazes me so much and makes me feel come again and again and again and learn everything that I can. And then I couldn't be happier because here, these 3 days, I'm learning more than my whole life about India and the Indians. And to finish, in Brazil now, people, they swear, they bet that I'm Indian. And here in India also, in many places, I said, no, I'm not. They say, but you look so much, are you sure? I said, of course I'm sure. I wish, but it's very difficult to acquire Indian citizenship. So, thank you.
So let me just read out this last bit. And I'm reading all these bits from the book because the book is on sale here and I would definitely be, want you to buy it. For close to 2 centuries, we have called this part of the world our home. It is the only home we have and we know. Yet we are often branded as foreigners, stereotyped as chokidars, darwans, and other menials. I embody the spirit of India. I represent plurality and resilience. In today's India, replete with majoritarian chauvinism, I am a different kind of minority. And I think that's the positive note that I would like to end the discussion about this book definitely on, because like Cherry's poem, which says and which asks the question, who is an Indian and who looks like an Indian? I think, this is the diversity that we need to be looking at.
Thank you. I think we'll close now. Just a point in passing, which is that Pratap Chetri, who you've quoted, is works with the state government of Mizoram. He's the public relations officer. He writes the speeches for the chief minister, and he is the broadcaster in Mizo on Independence Day and Republic Day. So he is very fluent, of course, in Mizo. And I say just this one thing about the region and the rest of India, especially Delhi, is that the region and its people are engaging with Delhi and the rest of India. They're not embracing it, but it is a daily engagement. Wherever they are, in whatever capacity they engage. They may not embrace. Maybe embrace will come a bit later. They are still a bit, concerned about being embraced too much. But people are traveling, they're living out there, they're settling, they're marrying, they're studying, they're working. And I think that is the new story that's emerging from here. Sumi, you're waiting with bated breath to take over from me and end the session. Here you go.
Hello. Thank you very much, Sanjoy. As always, erudite, informative, incisive. Thank you, Preeti, especially for your book. We have a few copies of the book being sold outside. I took the liberty of giving a percentage off or something. We're keeping it in the... No. We are keeping the book in the bookstore. Okay, so let it stay there for a while, and then we'll report back to HarperCollins. Gilson, namaskar, thank you, gracias, everything. It's been wonderful, a great perspective. After all, this today has been an amazing day where we've had Rishi and Shomya talk about Nihar Barua and the beginnings of ethnomusicology, led by a woman from Assam. You did not mention that she was shooting tigers, by the way. And a pioneering family. His uncle, Pramathesh Barua, was the founder of Indian cinema in Calcutta before Bollywood and the industry moved to Bombay. He was the first Devdas, and so he was known as P.C. Barua, and New Century Cinemas was the first amazing pioneering film. And so when I mention Nihar Barua, people don't bat an eyelid, but then when I say the sister of P.C. Barua, then people say, oh, really? So that was an amazing thing. It was amazing to have Milda tell her stories, that very personal thing of reaching out to the listener, of making it something about yourself, and of course, Sham Kanhai, who's the complete opposite. And we hope that ritualistic, traditional, epic, not personal, not focused, and I think tomorrow we'll have a nice discussion about the differences in the approaches to telling stories and narratives. And this year we were very happy to include people like the Orang, who are not to be seen anywhere in Assam except in the tea industry. So one of the two major money-making industries of Assam, oil and tea. The tea would not be possible without what I call the Adivasis, the tribes of Assam. They do not come from here. They're not indigenous here, but they've been brought here, as Sanjoy was telling me, under miserable circumstances. 1,000 of them died when they were importing labor, like the British also imported Chinese labor from China to man the tea gardens here. So there's an amazing story. And so that leads me to tomorrow. We will be drinking some original Singpo tea. We have Naga dinners. We have, what do we have tomorrow? Yeah, so lunch is fine, but we do have um, storytelling of memories by a young artist called Dheeraj Rabha, whose family was in the detention camps in Assam, in Golparia, and he himself grew up in the detention camps, and the concept of Ongari, the hearth. What does it mean to have a home? What does it mean for you to disappear into the jungles when you're running away from the Indian army? What does it mean to come out of it, become a surrendered Ulfa, as they say, Ulfa meaning the United Liberation Front of Assam, which was the armed guerrilla movement. And then when you come out of Ulfa and you surrender, what does it mean to go back home? Where is home? And what is rehabilitation? And so Dheeraj Rabha's artwork touched me greatly, that he's actually talking about memories, recent memories, ongoing memories, not just something of a far away, long ago legacy, but something that is stuck in the craw of the northeast of this country. Because you see, the question to say is, what does an Indian look like, is actually, I think, another question might be asked, and that is, what does an Indian feel like? So tomorrow, 8 o'clock, we leave the hotel, and then we go to, am I right? Yeah, breakfast at the hotel, and then we go to the boat. So all aboard the marine vessel Kohua Bon. So we'll pack you something. You see, when young people, teenagers always get up late, you know. That's why. Partying at night. Don't party too much. All right, so anyway, we're looking forward to a very interesting day tomorrow, and we will continue this discussion. I think probably the most important discussion at this festival is this question that your book raises. Thank you very much.